Seniors, I love everything you've done for this program. I'm gonna love you forever.
Number 3, defensive back, Jabbar. Number 9, linebacker, Salim Franklin. Number 20, linebacker, Tyler Johnson.
Welcome back to Pitt Beyond the Script, here again with Pat Bostic. Pat, before we look forward to 2020, and I think there's a lot to look forward to for Panthers fans, you say goodbye to a senior class. You were a senior. That's always a difficult moment for all these guys that poured their heart and soul into it.
Rob's senior day is always tough. You know, you talk about guys like Damar Hamlin that grew up in this city and meant so much to this program over the course of their careers. And guys like Aaron Matthews grew up in Clairton, won so many games in Clairton and then came to Pitt. And Dane Jackson's another guy that you're going to miss. These are good football players. They're even better kids. They've made an indelible impact on the program in terms of what they've been a part of. First Coastal Championship this senior class was able to bring to Pitt football, but they're passing the baton on and the torch to the next group of guys, and I think there's a lot of promise for those guys moving forward.
We say goodbye to that group of people. We said hello to a new offensive coordinator in Mark Whipple, and really, he made Kenny Pickett look like a completely different player.
Pickett wants to throw it down the field. He does. A man open. 10-5, touchdown. It's pulled in way down the field by Aaron Matthews. Wow, what a play for Pitt.
Anytime you bring a new coordinator in, there's an acclimation period, and sometimes it's longer than you think. This offense took a 180 this year from last year. Run heavy a year ago, couldn't throw it when they needed to. Now they could throw it all the time. And they had a passing game that was dynamic. Maurice French led the conference in catches per game, had over 8 a game.
Fires to French. He dives in the end zone for a Panthers touchdown.
Maurice French is just dangerous with the ball. I know Kenny Pickett's a different player. You lose Maurice French, he's another guy you're going to miss. But what balance does this offense strike a year from now? I think that's critical, because if they're able to strike some balance with the targets they have coming back, Taysier Mack, Shockey Jacques-Louis, Jared Wayne showing some promise, they can strike some balance in the run game, 4/5 of their offensive line back. They're going to be able to take more shots down the field. It's going to make it easier to protect Kenny Pickett off play action.
And they do have a stable of running backs and an offensive line, 4 starters coming back, anchored by All-ACC selection Jimmy Morrissey at center.
Yeah, Morrissey will be a returning captain and a first-team All-ACC player alongside Bryce Hargrove, who is an All-Conference player as well. Those guys should be much better next year. You got Gabe Hoy, played a lot of football. They'll probably move into that right tackle position. Matt Gonsalves is a young kid. They've talked about being a plug-and-play type of guy. So I'm interested to see how that group comes together. Again, I think another year Dave Borberly and Mark Whipple together in the offseason, in the lab, they'll be able to strike that balance between run and pass and become something a little bit more like Pat Narduzzi would like to see.
Intercepted. That's pulled in by Paris Ford. Going to be hit at the 2-yard line for the sack. He's hit. The ball's out. The Panthers recover. And this ball game is gone.
You're just hoping the defense, I think, can continue the momentum they built this year. Look, at the beginning of the season, Rashad Weaver lost in camp. Keyshawn Camp is lost during the first game against Virginia. And that's your 2 top defensive linemen. All that happens is a slew of guys, whether it's Jalen Twyman, Deslin Alexander, Patrick Jones, Habs Baldonado, all these guys stepping forward. You get Weaver and Camp back next year. Man, this defensive line should be one of the best in the country.
Yeah, they platoon guys. I mean, they were 4 in and 4 out a lot of times this year, and Charlie Partridge deserves a lot of credit for developing that room. I mean, Jalen Twyman had a terrific year, was a first-team All-League player, deservedly so. Led the country in terms of interior linemen with number of sacks he had at 10.5. So he's a stud. And you look at that D-line room, and they could be dangerous. I mean, the top 5 defense in the country could be coming back next year. I think that gives them a lot to look forward to. They certainly have some parts to replace at the linebacker level. Brightwell, Kylan Johnson was a big-time transfer addition, and losing Dane Jackson and Damar Hamlin on the back end. But you talk about guys like Paris Ford, guys like Cam Bright, Phil Campbell, and that made plays this year. The return Cam Bright had against Georgia Tech.
The ball came out, and the Panthers pick it up, and they're running with it.
This is a lot of good guys coming back in a unit that I think, putting the parts together, could be honestly a top 5 defense in the country and worth the price of admission.
You mentioned Kylan Johnson. He's interesting because I think a lot of people look at the freshmen who are coming in or the young players who might step forward. Johnson comes through as a graduate transfer. I don't know if a lot of people expected a lot from him, but he was phenomenal with 6.5 sacks, and he will be a big guy to replace, but that is another avenue. Perhaps the Panthers look at that to bolster whether it's the offensive line, linebacker, or another position on the team.
Yeah, as you look ahead, I mean, we can't get into specifics about recruits and things of that nature, but you look ahead, I mean, this has got the potential of being a very good recruiting class for Coach Narduzzi and his staff, they will explore undoubtedly some of the options they have at their disposal in terms of transfers. In certain key positions, you look at tight end, potentially linebacker, but what I like about this team, you look at their depth chart, you finally feel like you're 2, 3, 4 deep at each position. There's legitimate competition. This is going to be an important spring ball, and I think what might be surprising to people is come a year from now, come fall camp 2020, it'd be surprising who elevates on the depth chart. There's some guys stockpiled, buried a little bit on the depth chart this year that'll have a chance to rise to the top, and that'll be fun to watch. This team will have as much talent as anybody they play next year, if not probably more. I'm excited to see what they make of it, and they have a schedule that, on the surface, is a little lighter than they've had the past few years. All those things equal a great opportunity to have a memorable year. We'll see if they take advantage of it. And let's not forget this bowl game. Winning this bowl game will be even more important. And to get that 8th win, go into the offseason, that helps those preparations, enhances that even more.
It's pulled in by Malik Carter, who refused to go down, and the Panthers are back on top.
The next stop for you will be the bowl game. Pat, as always, appreciate your insight. Thanks very much.
You got it, Rob.
And that'll do it for this edition of Pitt Beyond the Script.